We're there. Welcome back to the Convo Couch, everyone. Pasta Jardula here.
Pasta, you were late to your line. You ruined it. You
Okay,
ruined
let's
the
do it
moment.
again. Ready? Hold on.
All right.
Welcome back to the Convo Couch, everyone. Pasta Jardula here.
No, I refuse. You guys know me.
You know Fiorella.
I'm Fiorella.
And guess who's spinning on the ones and twos is Mr. Overall Man. Man, I love the way he wears those overalls. I'm getting ready. If you don't know, we are going on a few trips right here to go follow some elections or election integrity or audits. Pasta Jardula will be going to North Georgia and Georgia to talk about the audit over there. Are going to hit up the connections we have. We had some interesting information last week. I'm going to borrow Oz's overalls. I'm going to go down to Chattahoochee into South Carolina, see how that is, have some fun out there. And Fee, hope she comes back nice and safe and sound, ladies and gentlemen. Where you going, fam?
Going to Peru, to Lima.
To, election over there.
A big election.
Huge.
Very, very tumultuous for the country. A lot of people feel like they don't know who to pick because of the history like we've talked about, and we will talk about that later. But yeah, it's a very big election, and you're also going to do some interviews too regarding the opioid crisis, correct?
Absolutely. The opioid crisis I will be talking about. As you know, we had a new show we premiered on last Thursday, To Hell and Back with Shanda. We went over her whole story. It's amazing, but it's an American story because it happens to a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, some people have reached out to me just recently and said, Pasta, please don't demonize people who go on opioids or the whole system, because, you know, I'm a person who needs opioids to, you know, go throughout my every day, you know what I'm saying? And that's a person who takes a low dosage, has migraine headaches and stuff. So there is this whole kind of story behind this story, you know, where people do use them for certain problems. But, you know, at the end of the day, I think that they've kind of, when I say they, Big Pharma, along with the doctors, sometimes have caused a bigger problem than was actually necessary. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Just because it may be used in certain situations doesn't mean it should be used in all situations.
I agree. And I think, I mean, my thought has always been, because I almost went into psychiatry, my thought has always been that if the system were different, if we had a different system where people were not exploited and stressed and anxious because of putting food on the table, because of their job, because of society, really, you would see less need for that. I'm not saying that it doesn't help some people, because it does. Medicine often does. But our reliance on it here in America, compared to the rest of the world, especially Eastern countries, you really have to ask yourself, are they that different than us? Or is it maybe their way of life that is a little bit different? And that's something that I would like to incorporate too into our system, is Eastern medicine, Eastern education, meditation, yoga, all of these things that may sound like ridiculous to some people, but believe me, there's so much more to that than we have explored here in the West. So
so true. So we have a big weekend of elections and stuff. That's going to happen. You're going one place, I'm going another. I also wrote my first Substack, fam. I put it out there. I'm actually going to bring another article over I had on the Independent over. Oz, if you can put that up. It's called The Establishment's Push to Stop Transparency.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of talks about what's going on in AZ in Arizona. If you click on it, you go into the article, you can read it, you can like it, you can share it. I had my friend Mike Unge help me out with it because he's a creative writer. So he went through it, cleaned it all up. I didn't fam it, which I should have fammed it.
What do you mean you didn't fam it?
I should have put links to it for all this stuff and whatnot. But I wanted to get it out quickly, so I got it out quickly. I'm going to go back. I'm going to put like the 5 links in there, maybe even more. I might even do the fam tweet thing, the way you put the tweet and tag the tweet in there. I think it's genius. I call it the fam way. Not Amway, fam way. You know what Amway is? Do you even know what Amway is?
No.
Oz knows what Amway is. Amway is this kind of ordering system where you order like monthly stuff from, and then you get people to sign up. It's like a pyramid scheme. They're called Amway.
Wasn't that the other one, the Hut? What is it? The Hut? Anyway, I
think there's a couple knockoffs ones, but Amway was the original one. And they would travel in packs. So it's like, okay, instead of getting your your toiletries and your paper products, just order through Amway on a monthly subscription, and then bring all people in, and they go underneath you and they do the same thing. So you get people to save a bunch of money on, like, paper towels, toilet paper, all that stuff, cleaning supplies, and they all order from the same thing.
Now it's called Amazon.
Yeah, now Amazon is just eating it up, and Amway's gone away. I don't even know. But it's funny because they would travel in groups. They would have meetings. And I remember working at TGI Fridays when I just got out of the Navy, and we were getting ready to go to a club after. And you know how Florida is. Everybody's partying until 5 o'clock. And it was like close to 11:30, and I was like doing my side work. So what do? My stupid party ass person, I pop a micro dot, thinking that I'm going to like go out to the club after, right?
It's a micro dot.
A micro dot's like a small, like, piece of, like, it's like a small dose of acid.
Oh, okay.
They call them micro dots. I, used to play around a little bit, and I wasn't like, when I tell you about these things are very rare. It's not like an everyday thing for me. So I can specifically point out the times, like the 2 times in my life I did acid. I don't like it. It's just not for me. I like shrooms, much better, much more natural and stuff. But I popped the micro dot, and I'm like, okay. And we're finishing cleaning out because it takes like a half hour before it kicks in.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm literally going home, showering, putting on my clothes, and going to the clubs. And all of a sudden, Amway comes walking through the door. They had an Amway meeting, and it was like 80 people. And my manager comes running, is all freaked out. Pasta, you got to get back on the floor. There's 80 people just walked through the door. And I'm like, are you serious? And I'm literally waiting tables on a micro dot, laughing my ass off at the guests, going, oh my God. And I still was flawless. They still left a bunch of good compliments and whatnot.
Oh my God.
And,
that is hilarious.
but that was me. And yes, so
believe me, there's a lot of people in LA who you just know they're on something, by the way, when they're surveying. I'm like, okay, that's cool. But fam,
yes.
what are we talking about? I don't know either.
I don't know how we got on microdots. But listen, ladies and gentlemen, remember, they're still suppressing us. Today we put Texas bill, we put Peruvian elections, we put MSN exploits Sicknick. So they're gonna really throttle us as they exploit us, and we'll explain that too as well. They're still using our shit, still going along with their story. They're still putting out their narrative using our material. Just want to point that out. Anyways, over on the Rokfins, we do have Trey Wright walk through the door first. And remember, Trey, when you leave a tip, it's always appreciated on the couch. He didn't write anything.
Trey, why you do that to me?
No offense. Thank you so much. It's
no. Why you offend me?
Appreciate on the couch. Those are your friends, right? Trey, right? No, they're now my friends. I love you guys. Always love them. How can you not love No Offense and Trey Wright? What great names too, by the way. Guys, we have 14 thumbs up on the Rokfin. We need everybody to hit the thumbs up and share it out there. YouTube's the same thing, even though YouTube's has us suppressed, demonetized, the whole 9 yards. I mean, it's disgusting the way they have us demonetized. Disgusting, ladies and gentlemen. It's not like they're saying, you're not getting your advertisement money. They're removing the mechanism in which you, the people, have always supported the Convo Couch. And to me, it's disgusting while everybody's making money off of our shit.
Damn.
Can we get into it?
Let's get into it.
All right. So the first one, we're going to go over the new Texas new election bill, which was attacked by the Biden administration yesterday. Was attacked a couple days ago. And it's a very interesting story because we're going to go through the whole situation. When we were talking yesterday, we were having a beautiful meal. Things were going on. I was looking into the amended bill. I was, picking points out of it and whatnot. Pretty much the same thing as the Georgia bill. They want to eliminate the lack of identifications on absentee ballots, mainly absentee ballots. They're not really changing anything at the polling places, but absentee ballots.
Which makes sense to me. It's on absentee ballots. I'm a little more hesitant in general. But in studying the way other countries conduct elections, we are actually very lazy about our elections.
Yeah.
Like we really have zero security in terms of comparing it to countries in the West, not just like third world countries, but countries in the West too.
Yep. They also wanted to eliminate 14 days of early voting. They didn't want any of that crap going on. And people might say, well, that kind of seems a little messed up. No, it's not. The longer the election is, the more time for fraud to take place, the harder it is to secure it, the harder it is to maintain the chain of custody. That's why countries don't have weeks and weeks and weeks of voting. You know what I'm saying? I'm down to make it a 4-day weekend. Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. Those are the 4 days. I'm willing to do that and say, if I was running elections, I'd say, okay, that's it. But 2 weeks, now you start getting information. Okay, like we said, once they process that ballot in the machine, it takes a picture, someone can access account. They might say they're not accessing an account, but if they can access account early and it's 2 weeks out, they can go, fam, Tony Cardenas needs votes because he's losing to Angelica Duenas. Let's get it out there. They can pinpoint areas. There's more areas for them to cheat. There's more areas for ballots to get lost. There's more areas for nefarious characters produce ballots. So that was one part of the bill. Also, the drop boxes, they're making them less of them.
Yeah.
First of all, I would eliminate them, period, unless they had a chain of custody camera on them.
Right.
But they're going to just make sure that they're sectioned out smaller, and there are an equal amount of ballot boxes out in the wilderness in those Republican areas of Tejas. I like the way I said that. And, just make it even. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. That's one of the things. If you're going to place these boxes out there, you can't be lopsided and have a bunch in the Democratic area, like none in the Republican area. So they're going to cut that down. They've even talked about a provision for tracking on ballots, which, there's so much stuff. I can put everything in here. But the funny thing is, we're going to go through it as we were eating our beautiful dinner. We were going through some stuff. Literally a half hour later, news started coming out. The Democrats walked out of session, right? They didn't have enough people for a quorum, which is necessary to pass the bill through. So therefore, the bill was put on hold. And now the governor has to make a special session. And in that special session, once he announces the date, they'll get it through. They have the votes. Yeah. So they're kind of just stalling on sometimes.
Right.
So that's what's going on. We're going to kind of go through the whole process. But I want to make sure people understand the way the mainstream media kind of frames these things and the way the administration frames these things. We need to have good conversations about elections. And we do have some good news, fam. As we get to the latter part of the section, I will show you an adult conversation on the floor about poll booklet maintenance. They had an adult conversation about it. I was like, wow, after watching hearings for 6 months, I haven't heard a conversation like this. And these are the conversations we need to have if we're going to be open-minded and say we need to have free and fair elections. So let's just jump into it. Or you want to have anything to say before we get going? Because
I just get, it's really hard for us to discuss elections from this perspective because everybody on the left has a very black and white, like Republicans are always wanting to suppress the vote. And oftentimes they are, but so are Democrats, and they're in a different way. And that's what you have to understand. It's not as simple as, oh, it's A and B. It's like, no, you have to understand how elections work, the different aspects of elections. It's not just voter suppression. That's a very small side of it, especially now with all the technology we have and all the nefarious companies involved that we've gone over multiple times on this show. So I think it's important that people understand, or not, especially me, like I am not here to say I want to disenfranchise all these people from voting. I am saying that I think more people need to understand why our elections are so screwed. It's because we haven't paid attention to the chain of custody, to security, and it's by design. It's not that they can't do it. It's by design. Yeah. And they're also double siding you, because while you're focused on getting people to vote by any means possible, you're not focused on the counting of that and how that works, and also whose interest is it in certain groups of people voting, and like how they manipulate and exploit your emotions regarding race, gender, even poverty, because those things do need to be taken into consideration, but it's just not the only thing. And like I said, Peruvian elections, they're not going to have like a system where, like they had a first round of voting, right? And then they counted those votes and that was done. That's it. And then they have the second round of voting, and then they count those votes, and then that's done. It's not like they have like a month of voting for people to, like, that doesn't happen in those countries. And those countries have far better elections than we do. Yeah. And that's the reality Americans don't want to face. You want to talk about Syria and Assad's elections? Please first fix yours.
I'm going to clip that up. Please first fix yours. I mean, yes. And we've seen this too as well. It really is. I think people have to get their mind off the whole Republicans and Democrat thing. It's the establishment, because inside these primaries where the real rigging takes place, you know what I'm saying? They suppress people's votes. They suppress the same vote, and they try to get that vote back for the general. it's a whole clusterfuck of things going on.
Mind fuck.
But let's stick with the part because they use these talking points, like you said. Like here's one, and this is what I put down. I said, here are some examples of establishment talking points used to emotionally goat you into thinking that these bills are just biased, racist of sorts. This is the things they use. We had the biggest turnout in our last presidential election. Why are Republicans making it harder for people of color to vote? Well, I mean, and this is the thing that's so ignorant about the Democratic establishment or the Democrats that just regurgitate this whole thing. Like, we had the biggest turnout. Yeah, but a lot of people don't believe that those votes are valid. Right. And you're not doing anything to show that they're valid. You're not allowing people to go back in and have proper audits. So don't tell us, oh, we had these audits. No, you don't. We have one audit going on in Arizona. We might have one going on in Georgia because I won't believe it until they get in there and start looking at those ballots, fam. And then you have the whole point of like, well, it took almost 5-6 months to get this shit, right? What could they have done to cover their tracks?
And by the way, Republicans don't help themselves when they start bringing up like, oh, illegals are voting and we need to stop. First of all, just even the language, it's going to offset the other side. Second of all, that doesn't happen. It's very, very rare that ever happens because these people are afraid of at all getting in any trouble that will get them sent back to their country. They're not going to risk voting for Trump or Biden for that. That just doesn't happen. When you make those arguments or when you bring up the ghost of Hugo Chavez, it really diminishes anything of substance that you're saying. So to Republicans, I say, stop doing that if you want any sort of progress in your elections and if you don't want to be called a racist, because yes, there are people like Mitch McConnell who we know actually manipulates elections too. Yeah. Like there are people that on the right that manipulate elections just like people on the Democratic Party. And that's a fact. So when you base it on facts and not on ideology or what's more, convenient for my ideology, then you can get somewhere and have a conversation. But when it's like, oh, like illegals, Venezuela, blah, blah, China, and then that's when you lose people on that side. And on the other side, it's like Russians and racist and blah, blah, blah all the time. It exists, but in very, very small quantities compared to what the big issue is, which are the machines, the lack of chain of custody, et cetera.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people on the left, they say, well, these elections were much more accessible this way. The most accessible election would be no securities whatsoever.
Right.
You just remove all securities. That's going to be the most accessible election you have. So like I said, we have to just find that balancing scale to say we need enough securities and accessibility where it's a good balance. You can't just have a free-for-all and let everybody go ape shit crazy because they will go crazy. And then all you know is you're going to get fucking extra votes here and there. So let's talk about this real quick as well, because that's what they say. They said, okay, why are they making it hard for people of color to vote? They really are not. But here, let's get into the whole shtick of what they're doing. Here's Ari Berman saying, after Texas had the highest turnout in nearly 30 years, GOP severely rolling back voting access, banning drive-through voting and extended voting, cutting Sunday voting, and making it a felony for election officials to send unsolicited mail ballot applications to voters. Okay, so, I mean, here's the thing.
You shouldn't do that.
Drive-through voting. Can you imagine? See if they have that in Peru.
No, they definitely
see if you can come through, you know what I'm saying? Maybe you're on a donkey or a car or a bicycle. See if they have drive-through fucking voting. And once again, this whole thing, making it a felony for election officials to send unsolicited mail ballot applications to voters. What they're saying is that the Secretary of States and these registrars and these election officials had no right to send out these ballots to everybody on the voter polls.
They don't.
Okay? It's up to the legislation to do it. So now they're making it illegal for them to do it, and they're making them abide by the law. The Texas bill that they were putting forth was more about making sure the laws were clear. It wasn't a ton of extra laws. It was digressing to back before the coronavirus.
Right.
And then also cutting out certain things.
So much like the Georgia bill, because like a lot of the things that the Democrats were complaining about the Georgia bill were things that didn't even exist before COVID. It was like what it was before COVID, basically. And they had allowed more accessibility because of COVID. So they're just like going back to pre-COVID times. So if COVID's over, why would we keep the same mechanisms that were just an exception for COVID, because even in other countries during COVID, you still had to provide some form of identification to get an absentee ballot.
Yeah.
And in some countries, they wouldn't even let you vote, period. So, I mean, this is very hard to discuss with the left in America, because they automatically feel like, oh my God, they're suppressing people of color, suppressing X person. But really, that's exactly what they're using to get you to completely not pay attention to really where the fraud and where the corruption really is.
Yeah. So also too, as well, watch as we go along this thing, fam. This just gets, it blows my mind, the exploitation of the mainstream media and the establishment. Critics have called SB 7 a clear effort to limit electoral participation in largely Democratic Harris County, because it would outlaw drive-through 24-hour voting, which nearly 140,000 county voters used in 2020 election. Okay, that was the coronavirus.
That was the coronavirus.
We got you and stuff like that. It's going to present a lot of problems. Let's eliminate it and go back to normal. Now, there is something I wanted to point out, fam, because I did get a little back and forth with Senator Sonny Borelli when I was on the show the other day. I called in to Uncle Ron's show, and we were talking back and forth. And this is one thing he says, listen, it's your duty to go vote. If you can't find one day to go and vote, then I don't even want to hear it. I'm like, listen, Sonny Borelli, Senator Sonny, you guys got to make it expedient. So I want you to pay attention when you go to Peru, see how fluid it is, how long it takes somebody to get through. Also, please, Fee, point out the IDs and the identification they have to use and stuff like that, so people can see what they do in other countries.
They use IDs.
Yeah, they use IDs. Yeah. In some places, they use thumbprints. So, I mean, I just want to say the fact that there has to be a two-way street. Yes, we have to make it a responsibility to want to go and vote. A lot of people don't go and vote because they think the system sucks and the vote's not going to count anyways. So that's why they throw it out the window, and that is by design. That's what the establishment has done to us. But yes, also too, and this is the job I want, right? From running restaurants for so long, I want the job where I can say, I'm going to make it expedient. Like Clinton Curtis said, for every hour you wait longer than 1 hour, for every extra hour over an hour, the county has to pay you $100. So if you're there for 3 hours, the county's got to fork out $200 to you. And he said it. I guarantee you there'll be fast and quick elections, because they did that on purpose. They broke the system on purpose, saying, no way you're going to wait 7 hours. Give me a mail-in. I'm going to friggin' send it off. So now they're flooded with mail-ins.
Right.
That was the setup. No, we're America. You're going to tell me that we can't run a fast election system where it's bam, 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 you get in and out?
By design, guys.
Bullshit. By design is right. And here's the exploitation. Here's Good Morning America. Listen what they say about the Sunday situation, which, you know, I would like to get more information, because on the Sundays, they don't open up the polls until 1 to 9 or something, or 1 to 7. And they're saying, why aren't they open early? I'd like to know that too as well. So let's, but still, the exploitation of it. Here we go.
Republican lawmakers in Texas trying to beat a midnight deadline tonight to pass what would be some of the toughest voting restrictions in the country. Known as State Bill 7, it's expected to eliminate drive-through voting and cut back on voting on Sundays, when many black churchgoers also vote. Republicans insist the move is to address voter concerns about election security. President Biden calling the bill un-American and part of an assault on democracy.
Damn. I guess there's not a lot of white people who go to church in Texas on a Sunday. I guess that's what they're trying to say. I mean, the fact that they use that, and there's this whole thing, they call it souls to the polls, right? And it's cool, right? It's like a whole family thing. Let's go, whatnot. But there's a lot of white people who do it too. Like I would assume in Texas, there's a lot of white people who go to church.
There's a lot of all people. There's a lot of Mexican people, a lot of Hispanic people that go to church on Sunday. Everybody that's religious goes to church on Sunday. I mean, you won't find me on church on Sunday, but like you'll find these people who, I mean, it's Texas. I mean, I don't understand. Like, it's going to affect everybody. One, and they're exploiting it because they know that they can tokenize these people. They can tokenize people of color, as if Democrats haven't already been a threat to our democracy themselves too. I mean, look at what Joe Biden's been doing. But, you know, I would like to know why they reduced the hours, because in Georgia, they actually expanded the weekend hours. So this is where I see a little bit of a difference. Maybe they want to give some sort of explanation to kind of back up what their reasoning is. I don't know.
I'd like to see that too as well, but it was very much exploited. You know what I'm saying? That's going to affect a lot of, maybe they want to make it so the people who work at the polls have a chance to go to church themselves. I don't know. I would like to know more about it.
It's what you're saying. It's 1 p.m., right? So that's after church.
Yeah.
People usually go. I mean, when I used to go with my family, some of the the church things were in the morning. Some of them were at like closer to noon.
Yeah.
So maybe that's it. I don't know.
Here's another thing they say. Republicans are trying to put the balance of power with our elections in their hands, making it easier for them to overturn an election. Same kind of thing, fam, where they take the responsibility out of the Secretary of State's hands. They have a commission, and that commission can decide. And it's really kind of crazy, too, as well, because the way the Democrats are pushing back against it, this is Mark Elias over here, Democratic lawyer. He says, well, combined with the rest of the Texas law, the bill will make Texas the easiest state in which to overturn an election via post-election contest. Now, I just want to read this real quick, and I want this makes me laugh because it's something, in other words, when the numbers are not matching, okay, well, the tabulation numbers aren't matching the ones we had in a hand count, you still got to go back and prove, you got to show the areas in which it was swayed or whatnot. This situation, section 232.062, here it is, a contest must prove an allegation described by section blah, 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 blah. Overturning an election, if the number of votes illegally cast in the election is equal to or greater than the number of votes necessary to change the outcome of election, the court may declare the election void without attempting to determine how individuals voters voted. So in other words, it's saying if the math doesn't add up, they can stop and void it will go over. You couldn't do that in the past. You still had to go out there and determine the individual voters and say, why aren't those numbers matching? Why do we have so many different ballots over here? In the case of Arizona, we talked about this. There's so many adjudicated ballots, almost 12%. The average is less than 0.5%. Now they have all these adjudicated ballots, and they're like, something's a problem over here. These numbers are not adding up.
And
in
by
Georgia,
adjudicated, you mean?
Adjudicated means is when electronical adjudication is when the machine flags a ballot and says something's wrong with that ballot. Now, historically, it was, and this is in the article, you should read my article, ladies and gentlemen, it talks about adjudicated ballots. Historically, it would be a crinkle, a coffee stain, a tear, and the machine goes, something's wrong with it. Now, the average, according to the EAC, the Elections Assistance Commission, was less than 0.5%. In Arizona, they said it was almost 12%. So they had a serious amount of ballots, whatnot, that were adjudicated, which they want to go and say, okay, what's the problem with these ballots? Pretty much, if the math doesn't add up, if there's no checks and balances, they can have a outside source say, hey, you know what, whoever's controlling the election, whoever the board of the election is, with the commission they create and say, nope, we're not going to verify or certify this election until we find out what's going wrong. And that was the whole thing. It's like, if this number came through, you had to certify. Now you don't have to certify until we find out what's going on. In other words, it gives them more checks and balances here to make sure that these numbers add up. It's going to make the door open for audits is what it's going to do, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Here it is, too, as well. You have the good friend of the people, Hakeem Jeffries, the big progressive. The Democratic lawmaker calls Texas voting bill shameful and says the Republican Party wants to make it easier to steal election. No, they want to make it harder for you to commit fraud. That's what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not obviously a monolith, right? It's not every Republican. It's certain people that are pushing this. Now, would they be the same if it was the other way around? I don't know, because both of these people play party politics, right? They play ideology politics, but really to actually get to the bottom of this, again, there has to be this end to, oh, these Republicans are the only ones that are cheating. Like, no, and that's the worst part, is like, people still on the left, people on the progressive side still think that Republicans are the only ones that rig elections, when it's ridiculous.
Well, some of them say, fam, the Democrats only rig them in the primary, not the general.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. Yeah. Good. Okay.
They're only thieves sometimes. But I mean, fam, people literally said that. You know what I'm saying?
I know.
They say that all the time.
People
that is stupid.
That. Yeah.
It's dumb.
Yeah.
And the Democrats, I mean, ladies and gentlemen watching out there, you do understand that they stole the primaries twice from Bernie Sanders. This fight we're having right now should be progressives. Not once, but twice. And we have data analysis. We have unusual fucking spike voting. Yeah. Like, just these numbers that don't add up, where it's like, I think in the article we put a saying, like, for Donald Trump to get caught by Joe Biden, you're more likely to get struck by lightning while cashing in a lottery ticket.
Caught up in votes, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it was ridiculous. And they found anomalies like this in Georgia. And they also have witnesses that signed affidavits. This is evidence that said they saw an extreme amount of ballots that weren't folded.
I need a smoking gun pasta. You have no evidence.
Yeah.
You helped stoke what happened at the Capitol.
What does Biden say about the bill, fam? What does the administration think? Biden blasts Texas voting bill. It's an assault on democracy. It's terrible. I need some chocolate chip. Where's my wife? Biden's statement comes as Republicans in Texas begin circulating a draft of legislation with votes on it expected to take place in both legislative chambers in the coming days. This was on Friday. Republicans in Texas and across the country have been touting the need for new election integrity measures to ease GOP concerns over ballot security. The worries have boiled up amid repeated evidence challenge claims from former President Trump and his allies that the 2020 presidential election was marred by a widespread fraud despite several recounts and audits confirming Biden's November victory. You hear the language, fam?
They lie. They're allowed to lie blatantly and just lie to your face.
In that Texas recount, the people who signed that affidavit were seeing those ballots and they're like, this is wrong, but they still had to count them. They weren't there to authenticate a ballot. You had to still count it in a recount. That's the thing. You don't know if these ballots are authentic, but you still got to count them. Democrats have condemned the nationwide effort, arguing that Republicans are merely trying to limit the number of people who can vote after losing the White House and Senate last year. They're trying to suppress the vote. Not like they didn't suppress the vote in the fucking primaries. Me and Fiorella saw them moving people to provisional ballots. Then we went into the room and saw how many provisional ballots there were. There was a lot of people's votes, progressives, who were voting for Bernie Sanders, whose votes did not get counted in 2016.
A lot of people of color in the Democratic primaries, Latino people who supported Bernie Sanders. Their votes didn't count. They didn't get counted. Trust me, they didn't. And that's the thing. Oh, well, I guess it's okay for Democrats to do it since it's the primary, but we're just going to unleash on Republicans on the general. And it's just so hypocritical. You have to realize it's one big aisle.
Fam, when you say a lot of Latinos too, as well, that's what we experience more than anything in the Latino areas. And it's almost like the CIA gave the people who were stealing these elections training because they knew the pride that was there, like just so happy to vote.
Yeah.
And when you're like, we were told, well, this is a provisional vote, just fill this out.
They were told it was the same thing when it's not.
I mean, I almost got arrested and thrown out of a freaking, I don't think I got arrested, but I was yelling. I could have got arrested. It was like a private hospital break room. And they're sitting there and like we see a bunch of people filling out provisionals and Johnny just gives me the nudge and he goes, look at that table. They had a stack of provisionals there.
Yeah.
Now we were just we went to, the more uppity area after where they had 3 times as many machines, 3 times as many workers. They had coffee, tea, and bagels over there. I mean, you can get a nice ginger, green tea, whatnot.
It's true.
I'm not lying.
It was not an area where there was working class people as much, and there was not an area where there were POCs as much.
And then when we at that POC area, Latino area, half the machines are broken in the room. You can't even use them, and they have 1/3 the machines that the other place have. You have young kids who are trying to answer questions about elections who have never worked an election before. You had old people trying to work an iPad that were like, am I hitting the right thing?
Should have switched them.
That's why I want this job. They didn't have aces in places, and they purposely broke this situation. So when I asked the dude, I said, hey, man, why are you filling out a provisional? Did you not have your ID? He goes, no. They tried to use the machine 3 times and it got jammed. I was here for 45 minutes. So the guy said, just fill this out. It's the same thing. Well, that's when I went a little crazy, fam. And I started yelling because it was wrong. That person's ballot was not going to be counted right there. A provisional ballot, by definition, requires more scrutiny before it is counted. And therefore, it was going into placebo land. We didn't even know if it would be counted at all. So I lost it a little bit there. And that's what the Democratic Party does all the time. So, they tell progressives to go scratch and they might count their vote and they may or they may not count the vote. Even on the first day when me and Johnny went out, right? We were in Eagle Rock and this is like 10 days before the election. They were open for like 10 days now.
Yep.
And we were at a section and there was once again a kid with his mom and his dad and she had to vote for provisionally. And I said, what's going on? And he's like, look, and he's showing me the email and he's showing me the ballot request. And it was before the date that she should have been able to vote. But yet they said, for some reason, your name's not on the polls over here. It's not in the booklet.
They didn't sync the booklet to update with the new system. It was, you can say, oh, that was negligence. That's the thing. They always say, oh, that was negligence. It just so happens that LA County was hardcore Bernie Sanders and all these people that got disenfranchised and he still won. But imagine what he would have won in a fair system, and Joe Biden wouldn't have gotten any delegates. We could be seeing a different reality now. But again, this is this is by design, guys.
Yeah.
This is by design.
That's what they say. He still won by so many. It's like, yeah, but this is a viability state. Yeah. You need to get 15%, otherwise you're not viable. Joe Biden got 26%. He was polling at 8%. Had he not got those votes, and once again, he had an extreme amount of extra mail-in votes, fam. I don't know, more mail-in votes this time. If he didn't get those votes and stuff, he would have not got any points in California. Bernie Sanders would have wrapped it up, and it would have been like this. Over. But people don't want to talk about why don't progressives call out the Democratic Party for being racist when they suppress Latinos votes and move them into provisionals that won't even be counted? Why don't we hear that, fam?
Because it would destroy their whole little fucking narrative, and they'd have to deal with reality, and they don't want to deal with that. So
yeah, and Bernie Sanders.
So the Republicans are going to go deal with it instead.
Yeah,
and yeah, I mean they're doing it. Why aren't you doing it? That should be the progressives. That should be the left. That should be us.
Yeah,
like whatever.
And it's just crazy to see all these progressives fight against their own what's the word I'm saying? Their own.
Well, they think they're fighting against racism.
Yeah, they're actually hurting themselves.
Yeah, you're hurting people of color, actually.
Yeah. You're giving the establishment the mechanisms to continue to cheat the grassroots candidates on a regular basis.
Over and over.
No checks and balances, ways to cheat it. I call on Congress to pass the For the People Act, and this is what it's all about, the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, and I continue to call on Americans of every part and persuasion to stand up for democracy and protect the right to vote and the integrity of our elections, Biden said on Saturday. Wow, he's so great. Texas joins other states, including Arizona, Florida, and Georgia, in either passing or mulling new election restrictions. Some states have already faced a string of lawsuits over the bills, and Democrats on Saturday warned that Texas will be sued too if the bill is greenlighted. Okay, I don't even know what to say. I hate to tell you, HR 1 has a lot of things in it that are unconstitutional, that are trying to take away states' rights. That's going to be interesting, that whole thing. But that's what they're trying to do.
Suppress the third party.
Yeah, ability. Finances. Kills third parties and allows the two-party duopoly to raise even more dark money and even more inflation and stuff like that. And that's what they're trying to do. HR 1 was a blueprint for the Democrats in these states to kind of pass a bill like that, where it's 15 days of early voting, where it's mail-ins on all the people on the voting registration and the poll booklets. Anybody who's in the poll booklet will get a ballot. But that's the thing. Yeah. We know how dirty they are.
I mean, if we had security systems in place, I wouldn't care about 15 days of voting in general, total. But we don't. So do it, like one or the other. You can't have both like that. You can't have 15 days of early voting and no security at all.
Chain of custody.
No chain of custody. It just doesn't work. Human beings are faulty. Human beings, and not just human beings, because I don't believe people actually go rig elections. This goes to the Republicans. It's not voter fraud. It's election fraud. This is coming from nefarious groups, the establishment, who wants to have things a certain way. And why do you think you have people who don't represent you? Well, if you're not voting for them, then what's going on here?
Yeah. There's been a lot of talks about the poll booklets, right? So this is one situation where you hear a group of people saying that if names are removed from the poll booklets, it's racist. You have the other side going, the poll booklets are dirty, they haven't been updated, whatnot. So there is some talk right there about what to do. Throughout these whole hearings, fam, I haven't heard an adult conversation on how to get this done. There are states like California where you have to miss 2 federal elections, so 4 years of elections when you don't vote, and then they have to send you out a flyer, right? And send you out a card that says, are you still living here? And if you don't respond to that, then they can remove you. And I think the process is that. I don't know if it's changed, whatnot, but it's a process in which your name's got to get removed. It takes some time to do it. But people make it sound like, oh, they're just removing names. They removed this many names. People die. People move. They'll remove names. How we do it, we have to have conversations about how to get this done. So this is on the floor. This is a Republican who is one of the co-sponsors of the bills, and a Democrat questioning about this particular part of what I like to call poll booklet maintenance. Take a look.
We talk about enforcement of voter roll maintenance. So this is requiring the Secretary of State to take a proactive step to ensure that the voter rolls match those who are eligible to vote. Is that correct?
I believe that's the intent, yes, ma'am.
Okay, so how would they do that? What does that look like?
The bill shows us that, and depending on what part of the code requires certain registrars to do acts, that's exactly what they'll be looking at. For example, a provision we just went over that requires them to, report things to the Secretary of State within 7 days regarding the registry of deceased voters. This would ensure that they did exactly what the Secretary of State told them to do.
So that means that the registrar would report to the Secretary of State?
Yes, well, the Secretary of State would review those things. And in fact, one of the really, really important provisions of this section is to require the Secretary of State adopt rules and prescribe procedures for the implementation of this section. That way there's rules to be followed and everyone kind of understands what their duties are. It would prevent the Secretary of State from just making things up. Okay, so if someone has moved in the transition period, that they're no longer in that one county? We actually helped fix that by an amendment by Representative John Turner. It's a great amendment. Yes, ma'am. Okay, so I just want to make sure that there's an opportunity to cure if there is a transition period that the person has moved, that the Secretary doesn't completely drop them off. Rather, the Secretary of State will ensure that they are registered in the county where they actually live now. Is that right? Under the code, Section 2.02 contains Representative John Turner's floor amendment. That would be amendment number 17, which would do that. It would amend Section 15.02(1) of the Election Code to require that when a registered voter moves to a new county, you might change your license or say no to a jury duty summons by indicating that you've moved. The registrar in the old county may not cancel that voter's registration until they've forwarded the registration to the voter's new county of residence. So if there's a discrepancy between what the Secretary of State's records show and the local registrar, who trumps? Which record prevails? Under this exact section, I'm not sure of that, but I would expect that they would look and see which one's accurate and make the determination there. I'm not sure of someone trumping, but I think the goal should be accuracy. Would they contact the voter to verify? I hope they would contact the voter. They should. But that's your intent, is that they would do that? If that's what's needed, yes. I certainly hope they do that.
Those are important questions. That is how you have a conversation. You understand every aspect of it. Well, who has the last say, fam? Is it the registrar or is it the Secretary of State? Well, we have to determine that, make a decision, talk about that. Yeah. Okay, records of deceased have to be sent on over compared to the poll booklets to make sure that those people aren't in those poll booklets. They're going through the checks and balances of making sure these booklets are fair. And that's something that we have to have a talk about because like we've said before, we talk about the cross-reference list in Florida. One of the most racist things you can do, the Al Gore Bush fucking election, they did remove people from the voter rolls in a racist fucking manner. And I say that with a curse word because I don't want to ever let it down what the Republican establishment did then, you know what I'm saying? They did do that. But that doesn't mean anytime they remove a name from the poll booklet now, it means it's racially motivated. It means that person could have died, that person could have moved, that person didn't vote.
It could be anything, but
we won't
you won't dispel the Republicans' worry that dead people are voting or that, people who shouldn't be voting, who aren't citizens aren't voting. If you don't put measures to actually codify that, to actually understand that this is how it's happening and to have a process. If you want to dispel conspiracy theories, then make the process transparent. That's the best way to dispel conspiracy theories. Make the process completely so there is no argument that they could say, oh, well, this person, no. Here's our poll books. They're kept up to date in this way. And by the way, I think same-day registration would allow this process to be flow so much more easily for people because then you don't have to worry about that. You can just say, hey, I moved, I'm going to register here in this county, and you're allowed to register the day of. And I think that there's a process for that would actually help people not feel like, oh, I was removed from the voter roll. Okay, well, then you can register again and just give us your information that you need to prove that you're living in this place, and that's fine.
Yeah. And believe you me, we saw a lot more people in the primaries going, why was I removed from the polls? Like, oh, it wasn't synced up, it wasn't logged and stuff. And then they also had the situation where they told people you can same-day register to vote and vote conditionally, but they didn't kind of tell you what conditional is the same as provisionally. So we have, and that was something like, it was like, we watched this, Dean Logan, what's his name? Adam Klein, right? Yeah. Alex Padilla was the goon at the time. They gaslit
Jeff
people.
Klein.
They obfuscated, they told people you can still register to vote and vote that day conditionally. Well, they didn't tell you that conditionally is the same thing as provisional. I mean, it's a pink ballot. They say they're different, but they go to the same place. They require the same scrutiny, and they're not a lot of them not getting through. Yeah. So as that was going on, fam, and I just want to reiterate, that is the conversation we need to see. who's doing what, how is it done, how are we curing people if they move. We want to make sure people have the right to vote. You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, if you send out ballots to everybody in the poll booklets, you're going to have a lot of extra ballots that aren't going to reach people because people have moved, people have died, and what happens to those ballots after?
Yeah.
People don't ask those questions, and they need to start asking those questions.
Again, I've gotten ballots in Florida when I haven't lived there in 8 years.
Yeah, it's
hello.
Yeah, because your name hasn't been, because that's the thing. Sometimes in certain states, it's even harder to remove you from the polls. You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's just that way. And I know people who've done some work with the poll booklets and the actual votes, and they're like, there's 60,000 votes of people who are not living here or are dead anymore. And we have the evidence here because, you know, there's ways they track that. But I don't want to get into that too deeply. We could talk about this all day and all night. As this was going on, fam, we had a nice, beautiful vegan meal. And then all of a sudden, I start seeing stuff pop up. It says a restrictive voting bill in Texas was on the verge of Republican Governor Greg Abbott's desk has failed to pass Sunday night after the Democrats walked out of the House of Chamber before a midnight deadline. Abbott says he will call a special session. So that's what it is. It says Dems stops Texas GOP from sweeping voting restrictions. You know, Beto O'Rourke was all over it. Austin, Texas. Democrats pulled off a dramatic last-ditch walkout in the Texas House of Representatives on Sunday night to block one of the most restrictive voting laws in the U.S. from passing before a midnight deadline. The sudden revolt torpedoed the sweeping measure known as Senate Bill 7, which would have reduced polling hours, empowered poll watchers, that's something else I want to talk about, and scale back ways to vote in Texas, which already has some of the nation's strictest voting laws. The whole fact is that it empowers poll watchers. It makes sure they have the right for oversight, right to stay in there. They can't just throw them out of the room now. That was a big thing.
That's not a bad thing, guys.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
They can't just throw them out of the room. We want transparency. You're a Republican, you're a Democrat, you're a Green, you're a Libertarian. Let's watch and do these ballots together.
We send the OAS to go and monitor elections, even though they're the OAS and we know they're a bunch of shit, but like we send them, and yet we can't have poll watchers here. Come on. Seriously?
Yeah, they don't allow them. The next paragraph, less than 24 hours earlier, the bill seemed to be all but guaranteed to reach Abbott's desk. The Texas Senate had approved the measure in a vote before sunrise after Republicans used a bare-knuckle procedure move to suspend the rules and take up the measure in the middle of the night during the Memorial holiday weekend. But as the night wore in the House, the GOP's chances wobbled. About 2 hours before the midnight deadline, Democrats began filing out of the chambers in greater numbers, denying Republicans the quorum necessary to hold a final vote. The walkout handed Republicans a rare defeat in the Texas Capitol, where they control every level of power and wield overwhelming majorities in both the House and the Senate. So, fam, they pulled a little move, the Democrats. All it did was just buy them some time. Yeah. So that's that.
Wow. Damn.
Yeah. 204 people watching over on the YouTubes. And there is, we got some people. We got 67 people watching.
Let's get it on up, fam. This next section's great, too.
Yes, because we're going to still talk about more elections.
We're international on elections, fam.
So let me read some more Super Rays. Of course, we had Trey Wright and No Offense, who did not say anything. So Aaron didn't say anything. Aaron, thank you for the Super Ray contribution. It is always appreciated.
I'm canceling all of you who don't say anything.
Keith Tyra, thank you so much. It is always appreciated on the couch. Fight Back, who left a nice, warm, lovely, beautiful Ray token tip. Thank you so much, Fight Back. Keep up the good work and keep on spitting fire and reporting on what no one wants to touch. No one wants to touch this shit. We're going to go touch it. I think Fee going to Peru is amazing. And a shadow ban refugee. I was thinking about you last night, shadow ban refugee. Elections are kaput. General labor strike, huh? Question mark. What do you think?
Oh, I agree.
I agree too. Sure. If there was any industry here to strike on, capital strike, yes. Stop paying taxes, divest from the dollar, boycott banks, settle into crypto, break the empire by economic means. Conventional means of change are for cucks in 2021. By the way, pho is the best noids to send to anybody. Black before red, FTW. What's FTW?
For the win.
For the win. That's Shadowban Refugee. He's even got more excitement in his tips. Somebody else I was thinking about the other day, I said we haven't heard him for a while, Brian Deutsch.
Hey,
A
Brian
Deutsch. Thank you so much for the generous contribution. It is always appreciated on the couch, Brian Deutsch. We have memories. We have history. We love Brian Deutsch. Brian Deutsch, I'd like to know about your opinions about what was the one with is it SB2? With the whole contractor, the
independent contractor? Oh, the PRO Act.
The PRO Act and stuff like that. I know it's going to I have some questions from Brian Deutsch because he's a DP just like Strategakis, right? Like Mike, like Strat. So I'd like to know his opinions because a lot of DPs I heard are not happy with the PRO Act, the way it defines independent and gig workers. Summer of 1970 left a Super Ray contribution. It is always appreciated on the couch, fan. Like that one?
Guys, if you please say something. Please help me out.
Put a message and you won't get that. Always
help me out here. No.
Okay. Yeah. So that's Tejas in their elections.
Tejas.
What about Peru?
Oh, fam, don't. No, just say it
fam,
the white man way.
They love this.
Okay, so Peru's elections, of course, are coming to a close. The election is June 6th. I will be there. These candidates had the last debate. The two candidates are Pedro Castillo and Keiko Fujimori. And they couldn't be more opposite if they tried. I mean, I guess they could. He could be more to the left, but she is pretty far right. The difference in the voting, right? It used to be about a 9-point difference where Pedro Castillo was leading. It has dwindled to about a margin of error within 2.5% around that. So Bloomberg had an article and they referenced several other pieces that were in Spanish because a lot of these, of course, the journalism and the elections that are happening right now are in Spanish. And I wanted to point out a couple things. They had a simulation by El Comercio Ipsos. And according to that simulation, thus far, and this is slide 27, Castillo would get 51.1% in the June 6th election compared to 48.9% for Fujimori within the polls, or a plus or minus 2.52% point margin of error. About 20% of voters are still undecided. Again, kind of like here, most voters will decide that day. Now, I wanted to point out too, so you guys could see how the percentage has dwindled, and you can see from the 14th of May to the 28th of May and how that percentage has changed. And it's definitely gotten smaller. Part of the reason that that's gotten smaller is because there was an attack in an area that was blamed to have ties with the Shining Path.
There we go.
And so they were tying it to him. There was a letter, and I think I put that in the folder, but I feel like this is a setup. It's just been so much like crap against this guy, calling him a communist when he actually is not really that much of a hardcore leftist at all. So the next slide, Oz 29, I wanted to point out a couple things. At the very top where Oz has it, you can see that the region. So Keiko Fujimori is popular in Lima, which is the capital of Peru. It has more of a modernized cosmopolitan area. There is definitely less indigenous people there. There is more of a capitalist mindset in that region. So she's definitely far more popular. And she's from the party, just reminding everybody, Fuerza Popular, which means popular force, like literally. And his party is Peru Libre, Free Peru. And you can see Lima, she's at 52%. He's at 26%. The interior, which is like the central part of Peru, kind of a little bit, not in the full center, but a little bit more inside. You can see he's at 46%. She's at 30%. In the north, she is at 39%, while he's at 33%. In the actual center, where it's a more rural area, she's at 30% and he's at 53%. And in the south, he has the lead at 59% to her 20%. And in Oriente, which is Oriente means the east, 46% to 27%.
Where are you going, by the way?
I'm going to Lima.
So you're going to go to an area which would be very heavily for Keiko.
For Keiko.
We think that. That's what they're saying, right?
That's what the polls are saying. Now, the polling there, I haven't really seen discrepancies. The mainstream media, obviously, there, just like here, favors her. All of the Peruvian people that are journalists here that live in Miami and are American speaking, or all the expats from Peru say it's a very difficult situation for us, but we have to vote for her because never communism. There's a very strong anti-communist sentiment in Peru, but he's not a communist. So he's like a labor union type of strike, like a teacher candidate. It would be like running somebody from the teachers union and who is a little bit more conservative on social issues.
Yeah.
And that's really what it would be like. He's not the more leftist one. I do feel like his party, though, has more leftist ideals. They were talking about rewriting the Peruvian constitution. They were talking about really cutting ties with the U.S. military and the U.S. influence, which is a good thing. And the problem they have is that the constant comparison to Venezuela and Hugo Chavez, and of course, subsequently Maduro, because the Venezuelans are living in Peru. And according to every Peruvian that I've talked to, including my family members, there's a lot of crime that is coming from Venezuelans, which has caused them to sort of have this xenophobic attitude towards Venezuelans and say, well, ask Venezuelans if they would vote for Castillo. So that's the whole thing. Like, and any sort of tie to communism that the mainstream media is warping on this dude is what's causing the pushback. Now, simultaneously, of course, she is the daughter of the dictator, Alberto Fujimori, who killed, and he's in prison right now for murdering people, for especially farm workers, etc., as a retaliation to the shining path. So that was the whole thing. He was a dictator. His daughter, as soon as she gets in, believe you me, she will pardon her father. And she's also has accusations against her and charges against her that she needs to respond to. This is like her third or fourth time running. So obviously she's really, like, there's a lot on this election, right? So just giving you guys a heads up on that.
I want to also just point out really quick, fam, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, because, I was watching a lot of Whitney Webb when it comes to the situation in Peru.
Yeah.
Fujimoto is more like
Fujimori, yeah.
Yeah, she's a capitalist. She's a corporatist.
Global capitalist.
Global capitalist.
Pro-police.
Yeah. Whereas if...
Pedro Castillo
is more of, I don't want to say the word nationalist, but he wants to nationalize all the natural resources. When he has this leftist mindset, he wants to make sure labor, those people get paid.
Right.
Peru is sitting on a lot of lithium and minerals, okay? Yeah. They have enough lithium here really to just enrich their whole fucking country the way Venezuela did years ago.
They should be
right?
rich. Just
they
like Venezuela should be for oil, Peru should in regards to minerals, as should Bolivia.
Yeah. They have that lithium, you know what I'm saying, and stuff like that. And that's why this election is so important to the West, because they're going to want her to win, not Castillo, because if Castillo gets it and nationalizes his natural resources, forget about it. Those people will be eating well. They'll be healthy. They'll have medicine. They'll have schools. They can rebuild their whole economy on the lithium they're sitting on. But once again, we always go in there, the West. We support the party that's going to let our corporate entities come in there, make all the money, extract all the resources. It's resource extraction, and they want this lithium, just like our boy Elon Musk said, well, cool, we want a coup. That's why they did it in Bolivia. They're going to be trying to do the same thing here in Peru. That's why I don't believe those numbers are even remotely close when they talk about, oh, it's almost within 2.5. Bullshit. The people of Peru aren't stupid. They understand if Castillo gets in, the nationalized labor, okay, the labor movement will be just uplifted, those resources, whatnot. So that's why this election is so important right now for the future. They sit on the lithium triangle.
I agree. But I think, unfortunately, Pasta, I do think it's close because, trust me, the amount of just hatred and fear that people have for anything remotely communist is very alive and well. Especially, weirdly enough, in the younger populations. Actually, in one of those charts, 18 to 25-year-olds were actually favoring her slightly over Pedro Castillo. The reason being because 18 to 25-year-olds do not remember Fujimori. That they don't recall Fujimori and what he did. So they're going to forget that. They're also not going to really recall the shining path, But at the same time, there's also that influence of like, oh, let's give young people this whole new idea of Western capitalism and Hollywood and America. People still in Peru think America is a great country, and they still kind of fetishize it in a way that is no longer true of America. But the propaganda is so strong against anything remotely leftist. I mean, I can't tell you. I don't know of a single family member of mine that is pro Castillo.
Yeah,
I mean, most of my family is in Lima, of course, but even then, I mean, even, it's just so, I mean, my mother, she was like, God, she's such a psychopath, but my mother is more leftist, and, and then there's my dad, and he's like, yeah, but we can't have communism. So it's crazy to me. It's so frustrating when I see these things, because I know that it's the same playbook here, where you vilify a person to make them look like what they did to Bernie Sanders, made him out to look like a commie, when we know he's a social democrat, if that, right? And so that's the same thing at play here. So last week, the technical teams from each party debated, and this is something I hadn't heard of ever happening in other countries, but it happens in Peru, where they have like the teams from the parties debate too and have a conversation before the candidates have a conversation. So I thought that was interesting, and that maybe perhaps we could actually implement that in other. Is
that them right there on the stage and stuff?
That's them.
So you're saying that like it's not just the individuals, it's the parties, like they have people. That is awesome.
Yeah, I think that's a great
team
idea.
Debate, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So the Convo Couch, the three of us will take on the three people at TYT. Let's go.
Oh God,
they'll
never agree to that.
Tag me in.
So the candidates, of course, debated yesterday. Okay, it was their final debate before the second round of elections on June 6th. And according to the polls, he won the debate. Pedro Castillo won the debate. According to votes from people of the Republic. So you guys can see in this chart, the next one, Oz, it should be that one. That one's fine.
That one, right? The number 2032 or 33, Oz. Oh, he's got it up. My bad.
Yeah. Okay. So Pedro Castillo, according to this poll, he won by 56.8% to 43.2% of Keiko's. And of course, the debate actually took place on Sunday night, the 30th of May, in the Aula Magna Simón Bolívar de la Universidad Nacional de San Agustín. So it was a university in Arequipa. Arequipa is another city in Peru, and that's where this debate took place. Now, what did they focus on in this debate? I watched the debate. They focused on the majority of key issues, including mining, the pandemic, the economy, women's violence, because that is a very big thing there in Mexico as well, and how to handle education, among other topics, right? And what I saw basically, just you can leave it on there. I'm just going to talk a little bit, because what I saw basically in that debate was that he was focused more on getting the people back their money, because there's a lot of exploitations of these miners, and his focus was to say we want them to get their fair share, and we want to stop the exploitation of the miners. So while he was saying that, they were trying to paint him as, oh, he's going to take away your property, he's going to take away your land, he's going to take away your savings and your houses, because that's what their idea of communism, you abolish property. Really, that does happen in communism eventually, but that's the abolishment of property. So they were trying to say that he was going to take away everybody's property and like make it out to be like this thing. And he was like, I'm not going to take away your property. I actually want you guys to have more money and more savings. And I come from a teacher's background where, we're rural farmers, and we want people to have the what they deserve, especially when they're being exploited in Peru. And we wanted to get rid of the people who are just exploiting our country. We want to reduce the outside foreign interference. That's pretty much what he was focused on, while she was promising a lot of things that I have a hard time thinking she'll deliver. She was promising on paying people with some loans that they could pay back later, which isn't that great. She was promising more access to vaccination, and using the whole I'm a woman, so you should vote for me, and women empowerment, etc. But one thing I wanted to point out is that Pedro Castillo does think people should be vaccinated, does want to open Peru to more vaccination, because right now only certain groups are getting vaccination, but he wants to use the Sputnik vaccine. He specifically mentioned the Sputnik vaccine, which is really interesting to me in the context of everything going on. And also when I've seen previous interviews of him in the rural areas, they weren't even wearing masks. And he was saying how like, well, it's different here, you know. And so he doesn't see, it seems like he's saying yes to the vaccines, but he's also like, let's try this other vaccine. He didn't mention the US vaccine.
So wait a second, fam. You're telling me that Pedro Castillo in the debate concentrated on not letting the West come in there and take their natural resources, but instead using their natural resources in the mining fields to enrich their own country for the people of Peru and give their laborers a decent working salary?
Yes.
What a tanky motherfucker.
And he wanted healthcare to be nationalized, like national healthcare, and education too, like free education. So he was promoting basically like, you know, progressive values, education for all, healthcare for all. And she was beating around the bush. Now, she was also, one of the things that really alarmed me about Keiko was in one of the discussions of how to deal with what's happening in Peru, which there's a lot of poverty, there's a lot of theft. She wants to bring in the police everywhere. She literally said, I want to have we need to empower the police, and we need to have them everywhere that there are reports of theft. Now, you could say, oh, well, yeah, if there's a lot of stealing, if there's a lot of crime, then you need the police. But it just sounded very Orwellian and draconian to me, the way she was preaching it. Like, you're just going to have a bunch of cops there and they're going to be pretty militant and ask people, what are you doing, where you're going? That's kind of what I'm thinking she would take it. And it's really scary because are there poor people? It's because you're not giving them like the necessary means to live. So they're stealing. And then, of course, you have the incoming of Venezuelans, which they'll blame on Hugo Chavez and Nicolas Maduro, who is now in power. Yeah. But they won't talk about the sanctions. They won't talk about why Venezuelans are escaping. And that's something that needs to be addressed as well. And again, Evo Morales and others have reached out to Pedro Castillo, have given their blessings to him, saying how important it is that he wins instead of Keiko Fujimori. So, that was a picture of them at the debate that he just showed. And I just want to read a little bit out more about it so you guys can get more of an idea of what happened. So according to this article from Reuters, they sparred in a debate. They did. I mean, they were pretty, she was especially vocally harsh on him. This was talked about an increase in public spending. Right-wing Keiko Fujimori offered cash handouts and bonuses as socialist Pedro Castillo proposed increased universal pensions. He wants universal pensions. She wants one-time cash handouts. Who knows how much she would actually do it. The pair are neck and neck in opinion polls just 1 week ahead of the country's polarized presidential election. The ballot could tilt the country. A relative safe haven for investors in Latin America sharply to the left, or see the controversial Fujimori family return to power. On Sunday, Fujimori, the daughter of jailed former President Alberto Fujimori, unveiled a proposal to seek more contributions from the country's mining companies. Castillo, an elementary school teacher, has previously proposed raising taxes on miners. And I think, let me go back here. And then the election frontrunner, Pedro Castillo, said on Saturday he would review contracts with foreign miners in the copper-rich country and set a deal for Russia's Sputnik V vaccine. So again, it's not like he's trying to raise taxes on the poor miners. He's trying to raise taxes on the people in charge of them, right? The elites that are in charge of them, the class that's in charge of them. Castillo leads in the polls ahead of a runoff vote on June 6th against right-wing opponent Keiko Fujimori in a polarized election that can move the Andean nation sharply to the left, a trend that has rattled markets and worried miners. Exactly. By miners in this context that Reuters is talking about, because you got to understand, but he's talking about the business, the people in charge of the mining business. I'm talking about, Pedro Castillo is talking about the workers that are making those people rich. Yeah. There's a difference. So he wants to empower the workers while simultaneously Keiko Fujimori wants to empower the business people in charge. This is why her support in another chart in a breakdown comes from the upper echelons of the class in Peru. So this is again a definite class type of election where you're going to have the poor rural workers against the more urban, like not urban, but like cosmopolitan, metropolitan, upper class, whiter population as well. And they were talking about how he was dressed. He dresses very much like with a hat and stuff, very rural. And he wants to rewrite the country's constitution to weaken the business elite and give the state a more dominant role in the economy. He talked about how foreign firms had plundered Peru, and he didn't want that. He would ensure that 70% of profits would remain in Peru, because a lot of the things that are happening right now, and even in speaking to my mother, you know, she was arguing. It was funny. She was arguing with my father. She was like, all of the money that Peru makes literally goes elsewhere. They're not keeping all of this money inside the country. So he's talking about stopping that. So if you're talking about 70% of it, he wants all of that to remain in Peru instead of going elsewhere. Again, why is one of the countries that is richest in natural resources still poor? That doesn't make any sense. Why? Because they're getting exploited by the West. And that's one of the things that Pedro Castillo would cut. So
fam, is there also talks about, I mean, I love the fact he wants to nationalize his natural resources. That's what he should do. Are there talks in Peru about the media, how the media controls shit? Because this is important too as well. I'm thinking the whole time, like, who's really running the media over there? And that's why we see a big push for maybe why Castillo kind of loses a couple votes, because they control the media and they transfer all that kind of support over to the imperialist candidate of sorts.
Exactly. The media is very corrupt there too. In one of the few shows we did, I think one of his I forget his name, but it was one of his campaign party members, and he was speaking on behalf of Pedro Castillo, and he basically said the media doesn't talk about how Peru is exploited and the DEA is the largest drug cartel in the world, and the DEA needs to go, and these military officials from the US need to go, and the media doesn't want to talk about that, how we have all this cocaine, but what is happening? I never see any planes coming in. Like where is all this shit coming from? He was talking about all of that. And so it's important to note that the media definitely has a role. And Veronica Castillo, who was the other leftist candidate, I think that she came in third place or something. Her name is Veronica Mendoza, and she came to his defense, right? She came to Castillo's defense and on how the media in certain sectors have portrayed him. So we're going to play a video and I'm going to translate as it goes.
Lo que nosotros percibimos es que ha habido una excesiva demonización, estigmatización, ¿no?
Okay, so she's saying that what I have seen is there's been a demonization and stigmatization.
Digamos, se ha dicho cosas, ¿no? Que en ningún momento
there are things that have been said
presidencial ha propuesto, ¿no?
About the things Pedro Castillo has proposed.
Incluido el que hemos visto el día de hoy, en el que se anuncia que Pedro Castillo va a confiscar los ahorros de los ciudadanos, no se
They have said that he's going to take away the savings
con la realidad. Corresponde más bien a especulaciones, ¿no? De
people, and it's not true. It's been mixed with the reality, and it's not true.
¿No? Y lo que nosotros hemos percibido, porque no voy a negar que por lo menos en términos personales, yo sí tenía ciertos reparos.
And what we have perceived, and I'm not going to deny that I've had my own apprehension of Pedro Castillo.
Desconfianza respecto de lo que podía representar el profesor Castillo. Lo cierto es que en el diálogo y el trabajo con él y con su agrupación política.
The truth is in the dialogue and in in working with him.
Hemos encontrado una disposición a escuchar.
We have found an attempt and a disposition to listen.
Consensos, y no solamente nos lo ha demostrado a nosotros, sino de cara al país.
Not only has he demonstrated this to us, but also
de manera, por iniciativa propia, ¿no? Suscribió un compromiso firme con la democracia.
By his own initiative, he has pushed a confident promise towards
las instituciones que ciertamente
democracy in the
merecen ser muchas de ellas
institutions,
reformadas, pero bajo los canales institucionales.
and the compromise to democracy in the institutions currently there. So she's saying that he's basically, the mainstream media has been warping it like he's like this communist, like I said, that he's going to go and take everybody's land, everybody's property, everybody's everything. But really, in speaking with him and his party and just talking and like working with them, she has said she has felt like he has given a commitment to like reforming the democracy within the context of Peru, obviously rewriting the constitution, but still not like abolishing private property, not like nationalizing every single thing. I mean, he definitely wants to not make it more of a national country, like a nationally focused country, because right now, like I said, all of Peru's monetary gains are being like taken out of the country and is being exploited. So that's pretty much what she's saying that the mainstream media has done. And another tweet she made here's where she called out Keiko Fujimori in using her identity, because Keiko started talking about being a woman and how she cares about women, etc. Very Hillary Clinton like when I was watching it. And the translation is, she said, a woman who allowed her mother to be tortured, who allowed and now denies the sterilization of thousands of farm working women, who blocked the advancement of women's rights with her caucus, cannot speak on behalf of women. Because during Alberto Fujimori's reign, lots of farm women were sterilized. A vast majority of them were. And even in her mother was also abused. And she, again, there was this whole culture, that this dictatorship that Alberto Fujimori had over the whole country. And that's part of the whole reason why so many people say, Keiko never again. But then the other side is like, well, we can't allow communism in because of the propaganda that this guy's a communist when he isn't. So that's that back and forth. So the important thing I wanted to point out here that I'm still, a little bit apprehensive about is that there's a delegation going to observe Peruvian elections with people from all over the world. One of the groups that's actually going to help and observe, one of the organizations going to represent, is DSA. You know how I feel about DSA. I have never, ever heard of DSA at all, ever being involved in elections or being election specialists. So I'm kind of keen to know why anybody would align themselves with them. Maybe they don't know very much about who DSA is, but this is a new organization called the Progressive International, and they're a year old. They just had their year anniversary not that long ago, and they have like a group of people that are like council members or something, and among them are Naomi Klein, John Cusack, Noam Chomsky, but also Cornel West and others that are less known and more of like at the activist side. So it's interesting. I don't know much about them. I know that they're trying to do something. I'm going to be open to asking them questions, but I would like to know what is their background on election monitoring, because unfortunately, a lot of these groups that go to monitor elections don't know anything about elections. Yeah. And so that's one of the things, like, if we're going to go monitor elections in other countries, you should be asking the basic questions that we would ask. Like, okay, so what kind of paper is this? How is the process? Is it machines? What type of machine is it? Where's the chain of custody? How's it done? What are the ID laws? All these things that I would ask if I was, being an observer in the elections, or at the very least pay attention to. And I know in Peru that you need it's called a DNI. It's like an ID to vote. You need to go and take that vote. And if you don't vote in Peru, you get a penalty for not voting. You are charged a fee for not voting. So you have to vote. Most people vote. And so it's a thing there. Again, just to present to you how it is in other countries, how other countries get penalties, and that's how they have a higher turnout. So we'll see what happens. I'm going to be asking a lot of questions. I'm going to be asking people on the ground some questions. I'm going to be trying to figure out how Peru's elections work in the inside. There's obviously going to be differences between how an election is done in Lima, a capital with resources and more money, versus how it's done in like the rural areas, which would be interesting to see. I wish I had time to like go. It's more difficult to get there. You know, it's not like I can drive. It's like, I mean, I could, but like it's just more difficult. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be very interesting, fam. I am uber excited that you are going. In a nutshell, you know, they have the same media slanting for the capitalist, globalist kind of candidates. So well, hopefully that Castillo can fight back against that. I'd like to see the other third place candidate over here kind of going out and supporting Pedro Castillo.
Yeah, she's been giving kind of like, hints.
I have my differences, but you know what? Yes, yada, yada, yada. I like that. It's just going to be interesting all around. How many days of voting is there?
I believe it was the first round and now it's the second round. That's it. Yeah. Yeah.
Don't they need 14 days, fam?
No, that's what I'm saying. Like, we don't like, if you're going to like compare US elections and complain about things, every country's different. There are different needs, but at the same time, like, look into how other countries run their elections and see, like, are all these countries like racist and all this stuff? Like, no, I mean, there's a lot of racism in Peru. I mean, that's part of it right now. It's the same thing we saw in Venezuela, the same thing we saw in Bolivia. The indigenous population has different concerns than the population that lives in the city. Obviously, there's a vast difference. There's a vast difference as to how they see things. They want to go back to the older ways of the country. They're kind of more against the whole just industrialization, not because they don't want advancement, but because they know that's going to require or bring in the West as interventionism. And they know, Peru knows there's a whole sentiment there too, just like there is in Colombia, just like there is in Bolivia, just like there is in Venezuela, that the West needs to stay the hell out. But there's also the fear in Peru in particular, because of what happened with the Shining Path, that they're afraid of a group that's like a radical communist Maoist group taking control. Now, of course, the Shining Path was a very, very small sector of the left, and they were completely denounced by a lot of people on the left. And their whole intent from the start came from a good place. Like their whole intention was, we got to get rid of the rich. So they started bombing places of elite in structures, like it was this part of Lima called Miraflores. They started going after them. So unfortunately, the way they did it, they went too violent and they started killing people. And then there was a segment that started even turning on other leftists, and all of this happened. And of course, then the CIA got involved, and there was money paid, and it was just a whole mess. And that's why Fujimori was able to do what he did, because his whole shtick was, I'm getting rid of these communists. Yeah. So that's why you kind of have that coming back now, so many years later, into the fold.
Interesting story. You better believe the West wants Fujimori. Is it Fujimoto or Fujimori? Fujimori. The West wants Fujimori to win right there. They want the capitalists to go in, to take over these mines, to profit off the natural resources, while the people of Peru, the workers, the everyday person, just lives in poverty and can't even feed their family. Castillo seems like he wants to change things around while going around these detours of the whole Shining Path kind of comparisons, whatnot. You know, and it's just very much, I hear when a lot of people talk about, you know, like a lot of Cubans in South Florida would always talk about, how bad, what was his name? Leader of Cuba for so long.
Oh, Fidel Castro.
Castro, how bad he was, how awful he was. Well, you know, there's a certain way a country's going to react when you have the boot of Western imperialism on your neck.
Right.
You know, sometimes you can only fight fire with fire, and I'm not saying I'm going to ever justify killings and deaths, but things will get really messy, especially if you're messing with the CIA and these three-letter agencies who don't care about life, who don't care what the average person in Peru does. They don't care how many people die in the mines. They don't care the fact that they're extracting all their resources. So this is going to be interesting.
Yeah.
Fam, please let me know how long it takes a person to vote in Lima. I want to know from the time they get in line to the time they get out of there. And if they do it fast and expedient, I want to rag on the Americans for taking 5, 6, 7 hours. I'd love to see how that is. There's so many
Yeah, it's
exciting
not like
things
people
going on.
bring each other ceviche because they're
Yeah.
waiting in line 10 hours.
This is amazing. Do you still have your GoFundMe up, or is it?
It's still up. It's still up.
It's still up there. Fee has got a lot of help, but listen, ladies and gentlemen, we got to get her there. This is a really expensive trip. Please help her out. If you want to help me out, go to Georgia. Mine's a little bit smaller, so I'm not doing a GoFundMe. I'm just trying to take some love on the Cash App and the Venmo. You can go to it. You can see my address down there. Go to Yo Pasta. I have it tagged there. I have my 2 addresses. I want to thank you all. The other night, we had a little fundraiser, me and Ungi. It was awesome. I can't tell you the love that you guys have been giving us.
You guys are amazing.
Yeah, you guys are amazing. And please keep it going as much as you can, whenever you can. If you can't, just share our stuff. That's all we want to do is we want to get this information out there.
Yeah.
We cover elections. And
I wish I had time to go to Venezuela too and hang out with Maduro and ask him some questions, but
fam, don't get me going.
I'm worrying so many people. People are like, oh my God, be careful.
Yes, please just come back safe.
But, yeah.
Oh my Lord. 76 people watching on the Rokfin. If you're on the YouTube, go over to the Rokfin, ROKFIN on your FM dial. Pasta and fee. The Convo Couch and Benny Massimo left a Super 8 contribution. Thank you, Benny. It is always appreciated on the couch.
Benny, I'm mad at you. That's it.
Dr. Dragon's here. Much respect. Keep shining the light. Smile. Love the Convo Couch, doing the real work. Thank you so much, Dr. Dragon. Thank you to all.
Thank you for saying something, Dr. Dragon.
Yeah,
You're my favorite person
today, right?
Yeah.
Guys, like, share, hit the thumbs up button over there. We have one troll on the YouTube. Do we have a troll on the we don't have any trolls on the Rokfin. You know, my one troll, Jimmy Toro, his name is, I believe, and stuff like that. Like somebody was saying, like, I was so pissed off. I'm so disappointed. How come my one troll only has 27 followers? Can I get a troll that's more popular? So I can say somebody who has a following hates on me. By the way, I think I missed Keith Tyra last time. Keith Tyra, thank you so much for the Super Rage contribution. It is always
you gotta say something next time, man.
All right, so let's go over this whole situation. We talked about the exploitation, the establishment, how they like to exploit people left and right. Well, they had to continue with this whole Sicknick thing, kind of relating his death to what happened, the rioters or the insurrectionists on January 6th. First they said it was a fire extinguisher. Then they said it was bear mace. They got a hold of some video from somebody. I don't know, fam. Who'd they get a hold of a video from?
I don't know. CNN?
Oh, no. CNN wasn't on the ground. No, it wasn't
Washington
MSM.
Post.
No.
New York Times. Come on.
No.
The Convo Couch?
Yes. Oh my God. So the whole mainstream narrative, the mainstream media, the establishment, they built this narrative around our fucking video. They wouldn't be able to make this story go if it wasn't for our fucking video. That looks a little blurry there, but let me read this over here. This is Wikipedia. So I Googled in the other day, how did Officer Sicknick die? Just to see what's still going on, if people are still out there regurgitating things. So this is Wikipedia over here. It says Brian David Sicknick, they like to use the middle name, was a United States Capitol Police officer. He died the day after he responded to the storming of the Capitol in 2021. Once again, connecting it. Following initial confusion about his death, the District of Columbia medical examiner eventually determined that he died of natural causes, specifically 2 strokes. He lay in honor at the Capitol Rotunda and was buried at Arlington National Cemetery. 2 men were charged with assaulting Sicknick and 2 other officers with hitting him with chemical irritants. However, neither of the 2 men were charged with causing Sicknick's death. The aftermath of the storming of the Capitol, Democratic members of Congress used Sicknick's presumed death at the hands of rioters in calling for the President Donald Trump's impeachment. And down in the storming of the Capitol part, it said Sicknick was a member of the Capitol Police first responder. During the storming of the U.S. Capitol on January 6th, Sicknick guarded the Capitol's west side, specifically the lower west terrace. Both police and rioters deployed chemical spray and other irritants. The FBI stated that rioters Julian Ellie Cantor and George Pierre Tanios arrived at the police line at 2:09. Over an hour after the assault on the Capitol began at 2:14, Cantor and Tanios, then close to the police line, had a discussion, part of which was captured in another video recording. Fam, Who's fucking video recording? Cantor tells Tanios, this is still going on right now. They're still using our shit. Give me that bear shit. And then appeared to get something from Tanios' backpack. Federal prosecutors wrote in a letter to court filings that Cantor and Tanios were both carrying bear spray and that Tanios was also carrying bear spray. Tanios told Cantor to wait, saying, hold on. No, not yet. It's still too early. Apparently suggesting it was too early to use the pepper spray to attack the police. Cantor responded, they just fucking sprayed me. Where did they get that fucking video from, ladies and gentlemen? Where did they get that information from? That it's on Wikipedia. And also, guess what, fam? Here it is again. Now it's in the National. Capitol Police, Brian Sicknick died of natural causes. Medical examiner rules. But when you go into the article, two men, Julian Eli Cantor of State College Park, Pennsylvania, and George Pierre Tanos of Morgantown, West Virginia, were arrested last month over allegedly spraying chemical on Sicknick. The men were charged of conspiring to injure officers and assaulting federal officers, another crime. The Justice Department accused Cantor of having, and Tanios of having, give me that bear spray during a riot, implying it was pepper spray. Where did they get that video? Where did the Justice Department get that fucking information from, ladies and gentlemen? And the reason why I'm getting disgusted over here is while everybody is making bank, they're producing papers with our work. They're putting it on TV with our work. They're using it on the local news stations with our work. They're probably on fucking radio with our work. We, the Convo Couch, are demonetized and got to go to you folks to ask for help with fucking going to elections because they have kneecapped us while the whole establishment, the fucking mainstream media, has painted a narrative around our work.
And believe me, they now know who we are.
It's also in the USA Today. Add them to the fucking list. I'll send this over to our guy. U.S. Capitol Officer Brian Sicknick died of strokes the day after the riot. Medical examiner rules. But when you go in there, oh, look at this. Where did they get this picture from, fam?
Does you see any sort of Convo Couch?
They cropped out our thing over here.
They cropped out our thing, our logo, and then it says FBI affidavit because the FBI took it without even calling us up and telling us, hey, we're going to take this footage because we've been threatened now because some people on the right think we're like some sort of fucking working for the cops shit, which is, trust me, if you know anything about me, you know I would never work for the fucking cops.
So they used our stuff, the FBI, the Department of Justice, the Homeland Security, all these people, the mainstream media, they used our, they wouldn't even be able to build a case or build a narrative if it wasn't for using our shit. Meanwhile, we're demonetized. Where they got the video from, we're demonetized. They were able to use it on their TV stations that have advertising and stuff. All this money. Even TYT, everybody uses, they're making money off our shit, but we're demonetized. Think about that. Inside the U.S. says 2 men have been charged with assaulting Sicknick by allegedly spraying him with a chemical, but not charged with his death. Julian E. Cantor, 32, of State College, Pennsylvania, and George Pierre Tanos of Morgan, 39, of West Virginia, were each charged with 9 counts, including 3 counts of assaulting an officer in the United States with a deadly weapon, conspiracy to injure an officer, and physical violence on restricted grounds. Each assault charge carries a maximum penalty of 20 years in prison and a $250,000 fine.
Do you guys still love the police? Do you guys still back the blue? That's what I want to know.
Yeah. And where do they get this, the way they can charge them? With our work, and we are still demonetized.
We live in a fucking cartoon because they can take our shit because they don't have the balls to go out because the only 2 people that got any footage of that fucking day were all, well, on the left. It was Status Quo was there. We were there. Johnny Fiorina was there and we were there. And then there was like right-wing independent media and just people filming. They didn't go in there. They didn't film anything. C-SPAN got it because of the cameras on the thing, but they didn't really. None of these people ever risked their lives to get anything. Yeah, that's the thing. Like we were there. If you want to call it an insurrection, then we risked our lives to fucking get this footage.
Yeah, no shit.
So guess what?
No shit. We should be fucking rich.
Yeah.
We should be in our new studio. I mean, seriously, they're building the whole Congress is building a goddamn fucking narrative on our fucking work.
Yep.
And they're not, and we're demonetized.
Not only are we demonetized, but we're constantly called, what is it, like Russia? We're accused of conspiring with Russia. Now Assad, I've been accused of. Now pro-genocide, a right-wing Nazi collaborator. All of these things. It's just so funny. It's like, well, what? The Convo Couch caught some Nazis for you. There you go. There you go.
Brian Sicknick, U.S. Capitol policeman, died of natural causes. Now, if you look at all the dates on this, April 20th, April 19th, early May. Good, Oz, you can put this one up. This is all new. They're still using it. Inside the article, it says Julian Eli Cantor, 32, and George Pierre Tanners, 39, were arrested in March of assaulting Officer Sicknick with a chemical spray. The two pair had reportedly grew up together in New Jersey and were working in concert and had planned to use a toxic spray against law enforcement, according to the documents. The documents allege that Mr. Cantor was recorded on video. Whose video? Asking Mr. Tanios for the spray known as bear spray. So once again, building a narrative, keeping it going, still using our shit. And once again, we are demonetized. Let's go through this whole fam. Do you want to say anything about that whole shit? I want to put a, because they're exploiting us. Now I want to show you how they exploit the family and loved ones of Brian Sicknick.
No, it's just
to keep this whole mentality going.
It's just gross that they're still, see, they'll say the truth, but then the article, they'll go back to tying it with these two guys and the January 6th insurrection or whatever they want to call it now. They've shifted kind of the vocabulary to make it less exaggerated because people aren't buying that shit. Like, yeah. And so, you know, we were right from the start when we told you this wasn't an insurrection, when we told you this wasn't an attempted coup, when a lot of these idiots on the left were like, oh my God, I can't believe a symbol of our democracy, Nancy Pelosi, oh my God, AOC, it wasn't even in the fucking building. Oh no, like, it's just like, oh, since when have you cared about, first of all, since when have you cared about the property of these buildings and these politicians when they don't do shit for you? They sit there, they either don't go to work, or if they go, they don't do shit, and they still get paid really great money, by the way, to do absolutely nothing for you. But oh man, the left suddenly turned into FBI cop loving, CIA loving, Pelosi loving, like property loving of DC bullshit. Like all of a sudden it took this whole narrative that they spun on you to pass a bunch of draconian bullshit that they've been passing now. So to turn you into a cop, like to turn into a vast majority of the left a cop, and they're still bitching, I'm sorry, about all of us saying, oh, I can't believe you're dismissing what this was. I can't believe the Convo Couch is dismissing the attacks and what they did and the trauma that it caused on Congress people. Let's talk about the fucking trauma that millions of Americans experience on a day-to-day basis. Why don't we talk about that? Don't give me shit about your trauma. Go see a therapist. Most of us can't afford to see a therapist. So I'm so done with the whole narrative. And on top of that, you calling us all this crap while using our footage. It's just the fucking, like, it's just like it's just like the cherry on top.
It's the cherry on top
in a cartoon world that we live in this shitty timeline.
Yeah. And once again, they wouldn't be able to do this whole fucking exploitation of Brian Sicknick's mother if they didn't have our video.
Yeah.
If they didn't, they wouldn't have put these laws and crying that they didn't get their 9/11 type commission on January 6th if they didn't use our video. See, they got to use our video to try to tie in Sicknick's death. That was so dramatic. And once again, yes, I don't want to see anybody die or get fucking hurt and stuff. But first they lied and said he was beat down with a fire extinguisher.
Did they get taken off of YouTube for that?
No, not at all. But we get demonetized when they use our video without our permission, without even authenticating it. That's okay though. So once again, this whole fucking narrative, they're exploiting the Convo Couch as well as exploiting Brian Sicknick's mother. So here she is right now, and CNN followed the camera around with her all day. They had her in studio, whatnot. So here she is once again. I couldn't stay silent anymore.
Does it anger you, Mrs. Sicknick, to hear senators who do not support this commission, and what emotions do you feel when you're confronted with that?
This is why I'm here today. I mean, usually I'm stay in the background, and I couldn't stay quiet anymore.
And then they went around from Republican to Republican that voted against the 9/11 commission style. And the camera crews were around them all day to make sure that they showed them. And of course, the mainstream media got into it. Here's No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen. Today, we should all be thinking about Gladys Sicknick, mother of fallen Capitol officer Brian Sicknick.
Oh my God.
She begged Republicans to do the right thing, told them it was important, told them how important it was that to her son's memory, and was utterly rejected by them. Absolutely sickening. And they showed the picture of, Brian when he's young with his mom, and there's Gladys right now. Once again, very sorry that she has to go through this. No mother should have to bury their son, you know what I'm saying? But at the same time, the exploitation of the mainstream media is disgusting in itself. Here's the Daily Beast, who referred to us as the dirtbag left. That's what we are right now. Brian Sicknick's ashes were inside his mom's necklace as GOP senators told her they won't allow a January 6th commission.
Dude, like, how sick do you have to be to exploit a grieving mother for a narrative that isn't valid? You literally admitted the report, the autopsy, the study admitted that he died from natural causes. This has nothing to do with January 6th. Now, oh my God, yeah, they need to have that commission because of your son, because of what they did to your son, but he didn't die from that. Oh, that doesn't matter. We're going to use this narrative to exploit and the emotions, not just of Gladys here, the emotions of these useful idiots on the left who allow themselves to be like, oh, no, like it's just, no, dude, like, stop being a useful idiot for the empire, because that's all these people, especially on the progressives, have turned to. I'm not saying that it doesn't happen on the right. Obviously, hello, QAnon and the following Trump like he's a deity of sorts. Of course, it happens on both sides. I'm talking about right now, the way they're allowing themselves to be used to manipulate a narrative we know is entirely bullshit. It's just so gross.
And then using the mother of the slain officer, you know what I'm saying? Andrea Mitchell on January 6th commission vote to fail in Senate. Michael Steele, I'm trying to check my emotion because we've just seen a pathetic display of cowardice and disregard for the pleas of a mother mourning the loss of her son, Brian Sicknick's mom.
This is why I hate liberals. This is why I hate liberals.
Why doesn't Andrea Mitchell try to check her emotion? Because her husband, Alan Greenspan, fucking in his policies, along with all these jerk-offs, these globalists that fucking raped people in the 2008 crash, and there's people on the streets from what they did, dying on the streets. You want to have sympathy, Andrea Mitchell, and stop exploiting some shit? Why don't you hold your networks accountable for all the people that they justified the bombing of overseas? Huh, Andrea Mitchell? But you want to exploit this fucking situation.
We have a fucking genocide in Palestinian, a slow genocide now that the ceasefire has happened. We have people getting kicked out of their homes and watching people from Brooklyn now own their homes. And you want to talk about checking your emotions? There's Biden and Kamala Harris are like, oh, what's going on? Palestinians are over here. They're like, what? What's going on here? Like they're ignoring the whole fucking thing. They're not gonna do anything. Like, check your emotions when it comes to how we screw people, not just here in America, but use their fucking money, supposedly their tax dollars, to kill people all over the world. Why don't we check our emotions on that? I'm confused. I don't know why.
Because they're disgusting. They're just they play games and they'll exploit any situation that will, you know, further support their fucking narrative. And that's the truth. Christine Pelosi with January 6th hero, DC police officer Michael Fanone by her side. Gladys Sicknick, mom of fallen U.S. Capitol officer Brian Sicknick, says she's urging Republicans to support a January 6th commission to investigate the deadly sedition.
Sedition.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what sedition. We're about to start sedition here, the working class. Our taxation isn't being represented. We'll talk about sedition.
Okay, and then the last one I had to put up over here was some of the stuff over there. This is fun. You got to get a chance to take a shot at Mitch. You know what I'm saying? Mitch responds to Brian Sicknick's mother whitewashing it, as you can see. The bear spray. I'm so sorry.
Oh,
the bear spray. Fam, where did they get this idea of bear spray? Where did they get this idea of bear spray, ladies and gentlemen?
Invaluable investigative journalism that they do here. You know, they're great investigative journalists. They just went in there and somehow they knew that there was this bear spray.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And did I mention that we're demonetized? Okay, here's this. Now, fam, this is like, when I first saw this, it was so nauseating. I was like, this is just disgusting. But watch it. President Biden just picked up the toy dropped by a kid of the fallen police officer, Capitol officer, during his memorial service. So it's Brian Sicknick's kid.
God.
And then down below it, isn't it nice to once again have a decent man in the White House?
I'm gonna fucking, I cannot. This is insane.
Watch.
This is
that so
us.
many now know about your dad and know that he is a hero. That his name will always be on our lips and his memory in our hearts. And that the President of the United States is picking up one of your distractions from greater compliment as no one had than the President of the United States looking after your toys.
Oh,
and that so many more.
Explain the situation. Biden just picked up the toy.
Why doesn't Biden go pick up the fucking body parts of all the people that are being bombed in Palestine, or the people that are every freaking day? What about the Yemeni people? Why isn't Biden going and picking up the body parts? Not because children are dying in these places. Children are dying. But no, they're not. No, because he can't exploit that situation for his little fucking narrative. It is disgusting. We are a disgusting, nasty death cult. And people who are supporting this narrative of, oh, January 6th was an insurrection, you are part of this death cult. You are supporting this empire. You are complicit in allowing this narrative to flourish, and these idiots like Biden and these shit libs exploiting this. You guys are also at fault for perpetuating it, because they use you as idiots. They weaponize you to continue this whole bullshit when they're literally telling you, no, he didn't die from that. They're telling you they have to at this point, because it's fact. It's scientific fact for all of you scientist lovers out there. It's scientific fact that this guy did not die from the bear mace nor from a fire extinguisher, that he died from natural causes, but somehow they still get to exploit that. And that's what goes on the mainstream media that is allowed to make money off of shit, while the truth, the things that we talk about is demonetized. Why? Because we don't fucking peddle the bullshit. That's why.
So Katie Johnson, I'm just going to end this because I had to, fam. I hope you don't get mad at me and stuff like that, because somebody made a response to that tweet after somebody said President Biden just picked up the toy dropped by a kid, fallen Capitol officer. This one guy, Mike Dore, says he just wanted to get closer to the kid.
Oh my God.
I had to. I'm sorry. That's how we're going to end the show today, ladies and gentlemen.
Somebody put up a poll that said, who would you rather leave your like 6-year-old kid or girl with, Trump or Biden? And I was like, God damn it. I mean, if I had to choose.
Gun to the head, I know who I choose, but I ain't going to say that out loud. But it's definitely a neither. But, but if you had to choose, same thing with the voting, gun to the head.
It's disgusting. No, I take my kid everywhere with me then at that point.
Right.
But guys, like it's guys, this is why this is why we're angry. This is why we do what we do. This is why we have to get you guys to support our journalism, because we're not getting money from Katzenberg, Anna Banana. We're not getting money from these whoever, like these idiots that give money to CNN, MSNBC, the people that that fund these platforms. How do you think they have all this money, all these with all the resources they have? They have multiple people. We're a team of 3, and we're already overextended and doing like everything from local issues, like what happened at Echo Park, to international now, going to Peru. Like next, we want to go. Let's go to Moscow next. Let's go meet Putin.
Well, there's a lot of places. We're going to have to go some places soon, too, as well. We're going to have to follow all these elections that are going on. I think that what you're doing right now going to Peru is amazing, because nobody's going to have the eye that you have over there and understand elections the way we do. It's just not that way. I mean, it's like kind of like sending a bunch of amateurs to a poker tournament, trying to get them to win the first time when, you know what I'm saying, you should be sending the poker experts to go play in that tournament. That's what's going on. There's a contest. It's a game, whatever it is. It's an election. Really, it's just who wins more votes right there. Let's go to somebody who knows every aspect of what's going on, and let's have them there. So you going, I think it's amazing, and I'm very excited for you to go. I'm excited to talk to some people in Georgia. I really, I want to, like I said, I want to talk to that polarizing candidate, Vernon Jones, who's going to be a contestant. He's going to be a competitor, I should say, for that Georgia election. The guy's got a lot of following. He's a man of color, Trump supporter. So he's got a bunch of Twitter followers. He goes back and forth with people. He says some really crazy stuff sometimes. Some polarizing things, but we're going to go talk about elections, hopefully. And it's very excited. So we got to go cover these things. So all this love you guys given today, Michael Ungeliner just joined in. Ungie, if you don't know, friend of the fam, big friend. Savage Fee. Okay, let me put you over the top for the first $100. in the tip jar. Boom. Which brought us to 101 and then Sebastiano. And thank you so much, Mike Ungie. It's always appreciated on the couch. Go Islanders. Sebastiano.
You didn't have to say it.
Huh? I did it for just extra.
Oh my God. No, you owe me
I'm
one.
sorry. You got a free one. Okay, Sebastiano. Thank you for being heroes, fam. Let's go third party. Check out the Volcano Party for lava-based solutions. I love it. Let them eat lava. Lava cake for the rest. Hashtag drop Congress into the volcano. Hashtag
well.
Krakatoa. Hashtag what do slave wait, is that Slava? What does lava cake mean to you? Hashtag what does lava cake mean to you? Sebastiano, lava cake is like a chocolate cake with a ganache that's lavering over. Is that what the ganache is?
I don't know, fam. You know food.
238 people watching on the YouTube's madly suppressed over there, ladies and gentlemen. Still hit the likes up, hit the thumbs up. Yep. We have 281 thumbs up, 1 thumbs down. We have a troll in the house or somebody who doesn't like us. We didn't have one over in Rokfin today. We have 71 likes, 86 people watching. It's amazing. It was a great show today. I want to thank Oz with the overalls over there in the studio on the 1s and 2s.
I need to get me a pair of overalls.
We got to get overalls.
We're gonna get overalls.
We should do like overall Tuesdays or overall Thursdays. We should have an overall day and stuff. And who's got the best overalls? Who wears it best? Oz, how you doing over there? Beautiful?
Hey, I'm doing beautiful, and you guys are too. Thank you for speaking truth to power. You're a refreshing pinnacle in today's bullshit corporate-owned media.
Love Oz.
Love Oz and love the
Roar
purple
Media.
background too. It's so beautiful.
Check out Roar Media. You guys have a show on tonight, right? What time, Oz? Talk about our shows. You guys got to get over to Roar. ROAR.
No show tonight, but we're going to have to a hell and back on Thursday night with Shanda Masta and our favorite pasta, Jardula.
Yes, we're going to actually talk about the history of the Opium Wars.
And then you fly out too.
I'm flying out that night to Georgia. Ladies and gentlemen, if you can go over to help, just go over to my Twitter at YoPasta. I have it pinned over there. I have my Cash App. I have my Venmo. Fee has a GoFundMe. We're trying to get to Peru and Georgia, and any little bit helps. Everything you showed today, all the love today. Thank you so much. And if you can't help out financially, just help out by sharing, by getting our numbers up, whatnot. Let's fight back against the mainstream media. Hey, they're using our shit, ladies and gentlemen. You have the pleasure of hanging out with some peeps over here who actually got the footage, who went there and got into the fucking mix and got the footage, right? You know what I'm saying? That's important. That's what real citizen journalism is. We're going to continue to do it, fam. You got anything else to say?
No, fam. Thanks so much for all of your support. I really appreciate it. You know, it's crazy, ridiculous how expensive it is to get there, especially from California, because, you know, it's one thing to get there from Miami, but you have to like go from California to Miami to Peru. And also not having Jonny with me, I'm going to have somebody help me film. And so that's going to be some money. And I hope to do whatever I can to get the footage and to get the information. Jonny will stay here, so hopefully he can stream me in, etc. And I don't know, maybe a protest will break out, because this is a very contentious election, and we really don't know what's going to happen. It's really up in the air. So I'll be reporting to you guys, and we'll see what happens.
I'm going to another country too. It's a country called Georgia. And no, American Georgia.
American Georgia.
And I'm going to go up to the northern part of Georgia too as well. To hell and back, the show on Roar Media that we collaborate with, that's what we're also going to do. We're also there to cover the Georgia audits, but we're going to talk to some people, some addicts, some people who are recovering addicts. We're going to get more information from those actual people who suffer from this opioid addiction problem that is really plaguing our country. 70,000 people die every year from opioid addictions, and that number just keeps growing and growing and growing. So we have to find solutions, but before we find solutions, we have to recognize the problem. So we're going to bring more light to that information and show you some of the people who are really suffering from this awful plague. So for Pasta Jardula,
Fiorella,
Oz with the overalls on the 1s and 2s, go check out Roar Media.
Convo out.
We love you. Say hi to Shanda and Amber.